It is June the 18th, and we are going to start the recording of the session. There are no students present today. So let's get together. Let's get started, I'm sorry. Okay, so today I was doing some exercises while I was waiting for you, just for you to refresh and clarify some things since you are not going to be participating in this class. So in the text that you have in unit number 6, page 52, you can see that there are different descriptions for different types of food. You can say that something is sweet or sour, if that is something is good for you, that maybe some vegetables have skin or they are round or low or high in carbohydrates or fat. So you can describe food with so many adjectives. I recommend you to think about adjectives because there are many things that you can say to describe vegetable or fruit. In this text, you can find the description of weird, that means different, not common food. Like, for example, these square watermelons, you see, or red bananas. What I want you to pay attention is to the words that I have highlighted here. For example, she said, again, what's the point? I'd rather have normal potatoes. I'd rather have. So it's I'd rather is the same as I prefer. It is another way to say it. When you express preferences, there is not only one way to say it. Okay, so look at the difference in the structure because that is what we are going to be paying attention in the second activity. As you can see here, it says cover the article and match 1 to 4 with A to D. What I want you to read is the following. Here, I wrote some notes that are going to be very useful for you to understand a little bit the use of it. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, well, because this is something that I wanted you to take notes on. So if you were in classes, I would have loved that you could have write it, okay, like in the classroom. It would have been awesome to have you writing this information. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. Okay, there. So there, it says, first I wrote, note that would rather is I'd rather. Okay, so apostrophe D is the same as saying would. Rather is followed by a bare infinitive. Bare is with nothing on it, with no decoration. Bare is plain. Infinitive without to. So you don't say I prefer to. You say I prefer with the verb, the bare verb. Whereas prefer requires to with a verb. If we talk about a verb, right? So, and if we talk about preferences, example, we also have to keep in mind that when you use, for example, I'd rather and prefer, it is not always that you are going to be talking about a verb. Now, I'm going to invite you to look at the chat room here. So when you talk about preferences, we said that we can say I'd rather, or we can say I prefer. You have two options. Option one, you say, I'm sorry, I have a cold. You say exactly what you like. Like, for example, I'd rather an apple. So that is the same as saying, I prefer an apple, please. Okay? But also you can talk about an action. I'd prefer, and as we said, I'd prefer goes with a bare infinitive. I'd prefer, like in the example here, let me find the example so I can use it. With a bare infinitive like have. Okay, I'd prefer I'd rather have normal, and I forgot the other part. I'd rather have, no, I'd prefer, sorry. I'd rather have a normal melon, for example. If we were talking about the square watermelons, I'd rather have a normal melon. So remember that I would rather goes with a bare infinitive verb. So the other option when you talk about preferences is I prefer. When you talk with I prefer and you talk about preferences, you say I prefer to have a normal melon. So that is the main difference, that with I'd rather I don't need the to. With I prefer, I need it. Something else that I wrote there in the notes is that American English and British English have a slight difference, because in American English, the form with to is more common with the form with ing in the verbs when we talk about preferences. It doesn't mean that it is incorrect or correct, one or the other. It means that it is different. But commonly in British English, like in general English, when we talk about preferences and likes and dislikes, with verbs like hate, like, love, and prefer, enjoy, all those ones, it is preferable to use the verb with ing. So in British English, it would be like, I prefer. If it would be in British English, it would be like, I prefer having a normal melon and instead of square watermelon, right? So in that case, you say I prefer having with ing form of the verb. Okay, and so you can also use rather to put ideas together. Like, for example, I prefer, sorry, I prefer having a watermelon, a normal melon, rather than having a square melon. Like an example. So in British English, it could be like, I prefer having rather than having. So that this is the same as saying instead. If you use instead, you say, I prefer having a normal melon instead of having a square melon. So as you can see, there are many ways to express preferences with rather and prefer. Remember, what is the most important thing to remember? That if you use either rather, what goes next to it can be the thing that you prefer, or the verb in infinitive with nothing. That if you say I prefer, you can say the thing that you prefer, or you can say to plus a verb. Or if you want to make it British, to express preferences and likes and things that you enjoy, you use it with a verb with ing. All those options are going to be correct. Okay, so I'd rather have a normal melon. I'd rather a normal melon. I prefer a normal melon. I prefer to have a normal melon. I prefer having a normal melon. So I'm going to write all the options, all right? I'd rather a normal melon. I'd rather to have a normal melon. I prefer Oh, I made a mistake. I'd rather to have. I wrote. No, that is not correct. I cannot erase it. I'd rather have. I'm sorry, a normal melon. That was my mistake. Sorry. I prefer a normal melon. I prefer to have a normal melon, or I prefer having a normal melon. Okay, so those are the correct options. I'd rather have, I prefer to have, or I prefer having. So those would be the options. Let's go back to the notes that I wrote in the activity. It says, there is a small difference, but we're not going to be paying attention to the small differences. Okay, now to not to confuse you, to make it negative, you say I'd rather not, or with the verb, or I prefer not to. If you use it in British, I prefer not having, I prefer not eating. Okay, so I prefer not. I prefer not to, or I prefer not with the verb with ing. I'd rather is I'd rather not with the verb. So now I would like you to take a look at the sentences. We have them. I prefer, according to the text here, is I prefer a nice round one. I prefer a nice round one. So it's one with letter B. That would be something like that. Okay, similar. I'd rather have normal potatoes. I'm sorry for the thick lines. I like them because they are sweet. They. I like them because they are sweet. I don't like these. Period. I think they are silly. Okay, so that would be the answer for that case. Let me go with the next activity. Well, we talk about giving your opinion. That's where I recommend you to look for adjectives and say your opinion about these fruit and vegetables. Like, what do you prefer? What do you like? I prefer normal potatoes than low carb potatoes. So that is something that I would like you to focus on, because when you talk about the things that I prefer, so you use the word then, okay? Like, for example, I I prefer normal potato, or I prefer normal potatoes, not sorry. I prefer normal potatoes than low carb potatoes, because I think they are sweeter and the taste may be different. So that would be my opinion, okay? So you can write your opinion, use then, or the other option, like I wrote in the chat room, could be rather than, when we say when we want to compare, or instead of. If we continue, we're talking about preferences and expressing our opinion. We are going to go to the next activity. When we talk about, now we are going to differentiate how much and how many. When we talk about countable nouns, things that as we said in last class, countable things are things that you can count, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the uncountables are liquids or grains or words that have like too many things. Like, for example, a lettuce. A lettuce is something that is, you can say una lechuga, that's right, but in English it's considered that it has so many leaves tantas hojitas that you better say una hoja de lechuga, dos hojas de lechuga. That's what you count, but not lechugas like themselves. So you say how much lettuce, or it's like not how many lettuces. It doesn't exist. When you want to say hartas, you don't say much or many. You say a lot of, a lot of. When you want to say that there is more than one, but there is no exact number, you use some. When you want to say only one, of course, you only use it with countables because it's a or an for only one. So what do we have to keep in mind? That many, I'm going to write it in the chat here. Many and much are used for negatives and questions. That some and a lot of go with affirmative sentences. So negatives with V and B. I'm so sorry for that misspelling. So also that you have to remember that a and an equals one. And so of course you have to keep that in mind. Let's go back to the book. So you can use many and numbers with countable nouns. You can use much with uncountables, and you use some and a lot with countables and uncountable nouns. The other words, and I'm going to ask you to listen to the audio so you can compare and look at the answers for number 2A. The idea is that you listen and repeat when you're at home, all right? So listen and repeat. Track 19.
1. How many tomatoes would you like?
How many tomatoes? Countable. Tomatoes.
2.
Or tomatoes.
How much milk do you have in your tea?
How much milk is liquid?
3. Would you like some rice?
Would you like some rice? Some rice, not a specific quantity.
4. I'd like an apple, please.
An apple. I'm saying one apple.
5. I buy a lot of bread every week.
I buy a lot of. A lot of is a big quantity.
6. Can you buy some bananas?
Some bananas, not a specific quantities.
7.
More than
I'd
one.
like some lettuce in my sandwich.
Some lettuce, never lettuces because it's not countable.
8. I need 6 tomatoes.
6 tomatoes because it is countable, right? So remember, how many tomatoes? How much milk? If you want to count the milk, you say how many cups of milk, how many liters of milk. If not, you say how much milk. Would you like some rice? Because you're offering it. And if you offer a rice, it's like a grain of rice. I'd like an apple is one apple. If you use some, you have to say some apples in plural. I buy a lot of bread because you cannot buy a bread. In Spanish, we buy un pan. But in English, you buy bread because bread is not countable, as we said last class. Can you buy some bananas? It says some, so it has to be more than one. It has to be plural. If not, it would have been, can you buy a banana? I'd like some lettuce because lettuce is never plural. So some lettuces doesn't exist. I need 6 tomatoes. Since we have number 6, we have to make it plural. All right? Also, the activity that we were supposed to be doing now, if you were in classes, is activity number 4, asking and answering to the question. So I recommend you to practice these questions. What's your favorite food? And I say, recommend you to practice because it's going to appear in the test. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite drink and why? Do you eat and do other things at the same time? What? Is this something you especially like eating in winter, in summer? What is it? When you order a meal, the first thing you do is that you look at the menu, right? You look at the menu and you look at the prices, and then you say the things that you want to order. This is a restaurant, and this is the vocabulary that you use when you are ordering food. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to listen to this text about ordering food and complete the sentences we have there. Okay, so then we are going to be checking your answers. Let's listen and complete.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Yes, of course. What would you like? I'm not sure. What's that one? It's fish with potatoes. Or there's chicken with rice. I'll have the fish, thanks. Here you are. Thanks. Does it come with anything? You can have vegetables or salad over there. Vegetables. Yes. Could I have some of those carrots, please? Thank you. Sorry, where are the drinks? You can order hot drinks here, or there are cold drinks in the fridge. Oh, right. Can I have a tea, please? Yes, of course. Here you are. Thanks. How much is that? €9, please. Thanks.
Okay, that is the end. So I'm going to invite you to look at the, to listen to the text again and check the answers that we have here. All right, so you will see if you understand or not. We are going to be stopping in every sentence.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Yes, of course. What would you like? I'm not sure. What's that one?
Okay, so the first question we have is the one that does not appear here is what would you like? When someone goes to the restaurant, it is normal that the person that is the waiter or waitress says, what would you like, to ask you what you need from the restaurant or what do you want to have, right? So what would you like is the first question. Then the person says, I'm not sure, what's that one? When the person says that one is showing something, pointing at something.
It's fish with potatoes. Or there's chicken with rice. I'll have the fish, thanks.
And when you know what you're going to be eating, you say, I'll have. When you say, I'll have, in that moment, you say the food that you're going to be eating. And that's why she said, I'll have the fish, please, or thanks.
Here you are. Thanks. Does it come with anything?
When someone says, does it come with anything, is what is and something additional. It can be salad or something like that.
You can have vegetables or salad over there. Vegetables. Yes. Could I have some of those carrots, please? Thank you. Sorry, where are the drinks? You can order hot drinks here, or there are cold drinks in the fridge. Oh, right. Can I have a tea, please? Yes, of course. Here you are. Thanks. How much is that? €9, please.
Okay, and finally, when you want to pay for something, you say, how much? How much is that? Say, ¿cuánto es eso? ¿Y cuánto sale eso? Supposedly, we were supposed to do the activity like in the situations with the role play. That's something we are going to have pending due to the absence of today in the class. Next class, we are going to start with unit number 7. So I hope that you could see this class. See you then. Bye.